This is the part where I introduce the guest, and if you think you've heard a similar intro before, then you may well have done, thanks to Echogate recently on the channel, the bizarre series of events that led us to interview the wrong person. So let's put a wrong right and give our guest today the intro that he actually deserves. In the early 90s, the platform wars were in full flow. Which was the best machine? Was it the Atari ST, the 16-bit consoles, the IBM PC, or my machine, the Amiga? It was the Amiga. And my weapon of choice to demonstrate that my machine was the best was to reach for the discs from the demo scene. Demos like Jesus on Ease by the group LSD, which was essentially a 30-minute rave. It was an incredible demo that stunned anyone that I showed it when they came to my bedroom and I fired up my Amiga. Today's guest is the man responsible for that huge tune that accompanied the Jesus on Ease demo and much more besides. So, some may know him as Graham, but I know him as Echo from the demo group LSD. Welcome, Graham.
Hi, everyone.
Have we got the right Echo today?
Yeah, it's definitely the right Echo. Yeah.
It was a very odd series of events that led us to interview the wrong Echo.
Interesting couple of days, surely.
Yeah. Is it something that's happened to you before? Has anyone ever passed off your music as their own before, or?
Actually, Mr. X a couple of years ago did actually point out another YouTuber who was some older tunes, some older mods, not Jesus on Ease, but some other ravey type stuff. But he was also passing them off as his own work. I called him out actually there and then in a bit of a ranty kind of response in his chat. Next day I checked, the channel was no longer there. So whether it's the same guy, I don't know. But yeah, certainly a similar experience to what you've had, I think, there.
Yeah, I guess they just think, well, this music's so old, who's going to remember it? And they just
this is it. Yeah. I mean, I'm just surprised that so many still remember this thing I did in my teens. I mean, that's mad, isn't it? Really?
Oh, we've never forgotten. Like
I've 25 years ago.
It's funny, yeah, it is mad, but it's still regularly on my playlist. Jesus on Ease, just like any other CD or tape that I had from the period. It's music, and it's good music, and you go back to it. And we'll come on to that demo in particular shortly. But before you got into the demo scene days, how did you get your first taste for music creation, Graham?
Oh, I mean, I've always been quite musical from a very early age. I did piano at school, stuff like that. But I never really got into it. I knew I was musical. I could do music. I could, I didn't have perfect pitch or anything. I wasn't very good at reading music. But I could do it all by ear. I could produce music. I could make a tune. I could remember how to play it, etc., etc. But it was very limiting. It's just a piano. It's just one sound. There's not really a lot you can do with that. I found the whole thing very limiting. But I was also very into technology, especially computers and stuff like that. And when I got my first machine, or my first computer that allowed me to do that, my Atari ST, that was the first platform that actually enabled me to combine those two great passions of, I was able to do all this stuff, make all this music, more than just the one keyboard sound. I was able to, combine multiple sounds. That was actually, I don't know if you remember it, there was a program called Quartet on the Atari ST. It was like this.
I was an Amiga man, so I wasn't that familiar with. I don't know if that was on the Amiga as well, but what I'm hearing is an Atari ST man created one of the greatest Amiga tracks.
Well, Atari ST, I got an Atari ST because my mate had one, and he said they were cool, and I didn't really know much about the Amiga, so I just went with his recommendation.
I think if you showed any kind of interest in music, the Atari ST was the default option, wasn't it?
It was about MIDI though, wasn't it? And keyboards and controlling synths, something that a 15, 16-year-old just couldn't afford or had. So it was somewhat restricting. Didn't really do a lot of music, but what I did like about the ST was the demo scene. It was my first kind of experience of the demo scene. Such demos, I mean, what was there? There was the Union demo, the Big demo, What the Heck, loads of those big Atari demos from that time really got me into the demo scene, got me interested in what you could do creatively with the platform. So then I came across this application called Quartet. It wasn't very nice. It wasn't a tracker. You could mix 4 sounds together to make music, and they could be samples, blah blah blah. And obviously it didn't sound as great because these were using the YM2149 Atari ST chip, which wasn't a it wasn't built for playing samples, but they managed to do it. It sounded awful, but yeah, they managed to cram these 4 audio channels. The worst thing about it was that you wrote the music in score notation. They sing quavers and whatever on a bar.
So you're putting samples on a bar.
So yeah, about a year later of using the ST, I moved over to the Amiga, and yeah, I mean, even better demos. I got access to things like Pro Tracker, and yeah, it kind of just went from there, really.
So you didn't make any moves to get involved in the demo scene in the ST days. You were just sort of playing your trade.
I didn't even know it existed. I mean, I didn't know it existed. It was not something I was exposed to beyond, just being able to watch them and experience the demos. Yeah, it's not something I ever had sort of. Never thought I'd get into. To be honest with you, I was just an observer.
Yeah. So it sounds like it was something of a hobby. I mean, I tinkered, I dabbled with trackers when I had my Amiga, never to any high standard. But as someone like you who could remember a tune, play a tune, but wasn't really very good at any musical instrument, it was a great fun thing to play with. Instead of firing up a game, fire up a tracker, make some noise. It was good fun. It was accessible.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. So you moved into the Amiga then, and then things must have got a bit more serious. How did you find your way into the demo scene?
Well, I can't remember who introduced me, and I've been racking my brain for years actually trying to remember who it was. But I mean, I remember meeting Pazza, who was the leader of LSD at the time, in his Gainsborough home. There were some other people from the group there. Shagrat was there, Mub was there, Maximan was there. I played them some of my mods that I brought with me, and then they basically invited me into the group, and I made music for another couple of years for the group, and that was no major productions, just music that was included in like the Grapevine magazine and stuff like that. But I wanted to. Yeah, it's a bit of a story actually. Because the reason I got into rave music is because when I left school, I didn't go to college or anything. When I left school, I went straight into work, and I was working in Grantham for this laser display company, where we would build these. Sounds very glamorous. We would build these laser display systems and take them out to gigs. Now these gigs happened to be raves, so I'd work all week, and then I'd drive Friday night out to the field in the middle of nowhere, and set up a scaffold tower and hold this big laser up on top of this laser tower and set it all up, and then just press buttons all night in time with the music. The music was rave, and it was my first kind of my first introduction to this type of music, and I thought it was amazing. It's so different to what was out there. The 80s, the 90s music. It was the commercial stuff. It was just so uninspiring and boring. But rave was really different. Rave, I really like the contrasts in rave. It's very, very powerful for me. So yeah, I took that and went to my Amiga and sampled some tapes at the time.
You must have heard in some of those rave tracks, though. You must have heard, well, that's a sample. That's a sample being triggered there. That's a sample of such and such a beat. I could do that on my Amiga.
Exactly. Yeah, and I'd seen actually, some people play live on a synth just triggering samples, and that's like, well, yeah, that's no different. I can do all of that.
Yeah.
It was better quality than the Amiga could produce, but it was still good enough.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I went home and I sampled some stuff, and I started to make some rave music.
Mm-hmm. And one of those tracks, or in fact, I think about 14 of those tracks turned into Jesus on Ease. It was about 14 mods, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was 13 mods made up the main demo, and then there was an end mod as well. So yeah, it's 14 in total. But that wasn't the first rave demo that LSD did. The first one was called Total Chaos, which is my first attempt at creating a rave style mega mix. But that was it was on it was on 1 or 2 floppies, I think. But it wasn't very exciting. It was just like a static visual analyzer scrolling around in the middle with some scrolling text along the bottom. And about 15 minutes of music, something like that. But it wasn't really what I wanted to achieve. I wanted to do what some of the things I was seeing in raves and seeing some of the displays where you had rave music going on, lots of changing images and fancy graphics going on and animations stuck in there and all of that. I wanted to reproduce that on the Amiga, but my dreams of putting 25, 30 minutes worth of audio on a floppy disk was not possible at the time. So I don't know if you remember it. It was a Mahonian Cactus music disc that basically they'd crammed, like, I don't know, it must have been 80, 100 songs onto one floppy disk. It was well beyond what was possible to fit on a floppy disk, but they managed it. And I figured out they managed it by making all of these tunes from like a pool of samples. Yeah. So I thought, aha, right, I can. I think this might be the answer for my dream. So I went to Pazzo and I went to Chagrat and I said, look, this is the way they've done this, and basically, they're basing it all on a pool. What if we did the same kind of thing, where I wrote this big mega mix off a pool of samples, and likewise the graphics and effects and things like that could also be streamed off the disc as the demo went. And they're like, well, yeah, okay, we'll give it a go. And that was.
Yeah, because I guess
history, I guess.
With the Amiga, once the sample's in the tracker, you can play it at different speeds. You can, you can reverse it. You can do all sorts with it, and then you just need one or two unique samples, I guess, per section to make it sound different.
A lot of it was ripped off.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pretend. A lot of it was based on popular music at the time. So yeah, a lot of that was sourced.
Well, it opens
with my sources.
It opens with tubular bells.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of samples in there that are familiar.
Yeah, I mean, I had to 4/4 the tubular bells because it's actually a 3/4 timing. So I had to make it fit the 4/4 timing of rave. But that was I just like those. I'm all about the contrast. I like contrasting things. That's why I like dubstep. You know what I mean? Because it's the slow beat and the intense kind of melodic stuff in the middle. It's all about the contrast for me with music. And that's just another example of the contrast, I guess.
What other samples might we have heard in Jesus on Ease specifically?
Right. Well, I do have a list. I should have prepared it. I didn't.
I think there was some Prodigy in there, wasn't there?
There was some Prodigy, there was some Shaman. There was actually a lot of the source material came from a Hit the Decks Megamix CD of the time, which I played on continuous loop in the company van as I was driving off to the raves. So yeah, a lot of that was very, very much cemented in my mind, and again was a lot of the inspiration for productions like Total Chaos and Jesus on Ease.
Yeah. So presumably copyright was of no concern to you whatsoever when you were taking these samples.
No, correct.
And what were you using to grab the samples? Was it like
back in the Amiga days?
Yeah, was it like a Techno Sound Turbo or something?
Yeah, it was something like that. It was something rectangular that plugged into the parallel port. Mm-hmm. That's about as much as I remember. But it wasn't, it was coming off tapes. It was coming off, and then later onto CDs, off CDs. But
yeah, and then
there wasn't the highest quality sampler by any means.
No. And then how was it all stitched together then into the demo that we know? Who else was involved in the process? Because it was you doing the music. I think Chagrat was involved.
Right, so Chagrat, who's Paz's brother, he actually did the main coding of all of the effects. Pazza kind of did some of the graphics as well. He worked through a lot of the animations that were ripped out of the wall. He did a lot of the masking on all of those and frame sequencing of that out of the. But then he called on basically lots of other people in the group to basically contribute. I think Watchman did the splash screens and stuff like that for the loading screens. So yeah, it was a group. It was my idea, but it was it couldn't have been achieved without obviously everybody else. I was just a music guy. I knew nothing about programming. I just had some ideas, understood the technicalities, but not the actual practicalities. And but fortunately, I knew people who did. So yeah, to be able to get that, the effects and stuff. So yeah, basically, I got a. I set Chagrat a task to go and create some, effects, and he gave me basically a list of these effects and said, right, well, how are we going to synchronize these with the music? And I came up with the idea that at the time, you've used Pro Tracker, so I'm sure you know this, but you control effects using hexadecimal codes within the tracker.
In the extra column as it goes
down. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of those effects weren't used. Some of the denominators for those, like F and stuff, weren't actually used by any function. So basically, we used that function and a number to trigger the different effects in the demo in time with the music. So basically, I spent so much time going through every single pattern in every single mod, manually entering these sequences.
Oh, but you were used to that. That was just like sitting with the laser display at the back of the rave, going bang.
It was, but then I'd every single one I'd play back. I'd like get to like 3 minutes in, and then I'd play back the whole demo and watch it up to what I'd done so far to check that it was okay, and then carry on. I must have watched that demo so many times. It's sickening, actually, how many times I've watched that demo.
You maybe don't have the same fondness for it as I do then.
But that's I think that's why at the time there were obviously people ripped the mods of everything, and there was ripped mods of Jesus on Ease going around, and I think there are even some out there still on the internet that still contain those commands in the mod, but sound weird when you play them back on a player, because the player because later on they obviously introduced features for those functions, and kind of that's why they sound weird.
Yeah, let's talk about the wider demo scene then, because there were supposedly, I didn't get to go to any of them, legendary parties in the 90s that surrounded the scene, where the latest and greatest demos would be played and fight it out to be chosen to be the best of the year. Did you attend any of these parties?
Yeah, I did a couple. The Jesus on Ease one was released at one such party, the Digital Symposium party. In October 1992, that's when we released Jesus on Ease.
How was it received at that party?
It came second.
Oh no!
I think it was received as repetitive and unimaginative compared to other more traditional demo, shall we say?
Oh, you were ahead of the curve.
I think people you had to appreciate the music, didn't you? You had to be into rave to be able to get into the demo, and it wasn't a widely accepted type of music, was it?
And were there any groups who you would consider rivals? Was there much rivalry?
I don't remember much rivalry, to be honest with you. All I remember is taking my Amiga along, a mountain of speakers and an amp, and just basically playing music as loudly as possible to drown everybody else out. Yeah, I think that was that's pretty much my party experience. But no, there wasn't much rivalry as far as I remember. It was a pretty good, wholesome experience all round. They went on for a couple of days as well, so people would sort of sleep in sleeping bags. There'd be competitions. The later ones had obviously expanded to having things on the screen and all that kind of stuff on a bigger screen. But it's all very much early days back then.
Yeah. Did you ever get to play any of your Amiga created music app? Some of those big raves that you used to attend? Did you?
No, I was purely the laser guy. I had nothing to do with the audio or anything. We have a barking dog.
What's the dog called?
My dog's called Thor.
Thor, good name.
He's a very small dog. It seemed he's small, white, and fluffy. He's like a Shih Tzu. So yeah, it seems that Thor was the only real choice. All about that contrast again.
So we'll move on slightly then from the demo scene. You've made a name for yourself in the demo scene. I can see that you'd worked on 10, 11, 12 different or 4 different demo groups. It wasn't just LSD. So you moved around.
No, that's not true. That information on what page was that you posted?
I'll have to send you the link. Was that incorrect information? It's not like me to put incorrect information on a video.
Yeah, I'm just as shocked. It's like one of those demo sites where they list all of the what I think there are a lot of people called Echo, and I think there's a lot of overlap in what people remember of what groups. But no, I was only ever a member of 2 groups. The first I can't remember the name of, and then I joined LSD, and I joined LSD until the end of my senior career, if you will.
Right, there we go. We've set the record straight then.
Yeah, that information is. I've never been bothered enough to correct it. I didn't think it mattered.
So post demo scene, the Amiga starts to enter its decline. and we all moved on, sadly. Well, most of us did. What happened next for your career? Because this whole music thing, it wasn't really a career for you, but were you looking to make it a career?
I moved down to Exeter a few years later with a girlfriend, and just lazed about for a couple of years on the dole. Eventually got a job in IT for an insurance company, just IT support. But I was still doing music and stuff like that. Someone I knew actually worked for Glastonbury and ran one of the stages, and he also was a manager for a couple of other bands. So I played him some of my more recent stuff that had been written on a PC in a breakbeat style. He liked that. I actually played Glastonbury for 2 years.
Under what name did you appear?
So that's under my new moniker, which was Spoon Wizard.
Spoon Wizard. Okay.
So I moved away from Echo because I was fed up of everyone saying, "Oh, and the Bunny Men" or something like that every time I said what my name was. So I thought, I'll go with something weird.
So when you applied for the IT jobs, did you include any of your LSD information on your CV? Did it open any doors for you?
No. Those two worlds are very, very far apart, I think.
Mr. X, I think it was, said to me, it might have been someone else, but they said, Graham, who was Echo, he does a lot of IT now, and he does a lot of work on VMware and things like that. And I was like, no, don't spoil the legend. I don't want to think about this guy in a server room spinning up virtual machines. I want to think about him kicking out mods and playing at Glastonbury. That's a much better story.
Can't I do both?
You can do both. Okay. A man's got to feed himself, I guess. On reflection then, just to wrap it up, Graham, how important do you think those demo scene days were to you, either for your career or just for your life, shaping your life in general? Would you change anything?
No, I wouldn't change anything. I think they were, it was an inspiring time. I still reminisce about those days enough to go on and write a remake of the Jesus on Ease track. So I still get messages, from people. They message me through my website. I don't get very many, maybe once every couple of years or something. But people saying, I remember Jesus on Ease. I just found your site. I just found the remix. Thanks so much. I just wanted to say thanks so much for the inspiration from back in the day. It made me do this. It made me do that, and that's pretty amazing to hear that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it must be. Where can we find that website and any other links that you want to share with us to hear your music?
Well, my main website, which is spoonwizard.com, that is probably needs an update. Hasn't been touched in many years. I'm very lazy when it comes to such admin. Majority of my music and stuff that I'm doing of late, I basically put on my SoundCloud webpage, which is also under the same title, Spoon Wizard.
Okay.
I'm sure you'll include some links.
Yeah, we'll put some links in the description. So I do encourage people to go and check it out. Go and listen to the remixed version of Jesus on Ease and all of Graham's newer music. Graham, thank you so much for spending the time with us today. Might we ever get to see you at one of these retro expos or anything like that to see you playing your music?
I did go to the Sundown demo party a couple of years ago because that's fairly local to me. And if that organizer puts on another event, I'll try and make an effort. No promises.
Excellent. Well, I will
Lots
be
of big
there.
on public appearances, but I'll do what I can.
Excellent. Graham, Echo, Spoon Wizard, thank you for your time, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you.